Good evening and welcome to Solutionary TV. I am your host, Dr. Tatiana. And tonight we are going to be delving into a little bit of education because, after all, we are in an era of fake news. We are in an era of big pharma, big medical, big government, big corporations. Everything is megalithic these days, and we are responsible to educate ourselves about the systems, the businesses, and the organizations that we are patronizing and that we are in many cases subjugating or otherwise providing our own personal powers of understanding and education to. We really are responsible for our own self-advocacy. So we're excited to cover a couple of those topics tonight. And with us we have Dr. Joe Criscuola. And I hope I'm pronouncing his name right because he'll be on in a moment to correct me. But let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Joe. He holds a bachelor's degree in cultural anthropology from the University of Arizona and a doctorate from Palmer College of Chiropractic, placing him well on his journey into natural healing and wellness. Dr. Joe has been running his chiropractic and wellness clinic since 2007 and has seen thousands of patients get well without the need of drugs or surgeries. He specializes in treating children to resolve seizures, adults with tremors, teens with migraines, businessmen with insomnia, moms with hormonal imbalances, vertigo, fibromyalgia, and more. In essence, he treats everyone that comes to see him. Tonight, he joins us to discuss his advocacy for healthcare awareness, alternative approaches to building the immune system, and vaccine education with its inherent risks. It's a very complete package, and we'd like to welcome him now. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Joe.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, we're really thrilled to have you. We are going to talk about kind of a wide range of wellness applications. Really, it's about education. And I was impressed when your name was passed along to me as a referral that you had such a complete and comprehensive offering for your clientele / patients when they come in to see you. It isn't just a one-stop shop, get you on the table and crack your back and send you on your way. And not that we take anything away from various applications in chiropractic, but to come and have an entire family seen for all of their wellness needs, preventative care, etc., is really kind of a revolutionary way of dealing with patients and the public and education, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we really try to have to teach people the principles of health, so that we're not just treating symptoms, but we're teaching people the foundational elements that it takes to get and stay well. And that means it's for your kids, it's for your parents, it's for everyone and anyone needs to know these things. And that's why we take a little extra time and really try to make education a huge part of what we do.
Okay, so if someone was to walk into your practice, Dr. Joe, tell me how they're greeted in terms of literature, in terms of finding out a little bit more about symptomology so that you can be constantly educating your patients and bringing them back to causal awareness and preventative and wellness care.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with like the multiple touches. So even on their intake form, it says something like, Dr. Joe does not actually treat migraines, seizures, fibromyalgia, or your body has the ability to heal these things.
Right.
And so like it's right there on the first piece of paper that they sign. So that we drip it as we go. Then they watch a small video that informs them of the power of the brain and the nervous system and the importance of having that working properly. So people typically can only take things in small doses, and so we kind of just drip it throughout the first couple of days and make those first couple of days hopefully a paradigm shift for people so that they see their health in a different way.
So there's a lot of educating, obviously,
Correct.
on the overall application of how can you be instrumental in your own wellness protocols? How can you take what we are providing you in terms of education tools as well as the care that you're providing them so that whatever they've shown up with, it might be a digestive issue, it might be chronic conditions of inflammation, and have a holistic view of how many of the contributing factors could be leading to some of their conditions. And we do know that we've got an inflammation issue in this country right now. I think that we've been talking in previous shows with other wellness professionals that there are some things that are leading to that chronic inflammation that may have to do with toxic air, toxic water, food that has been Frankensteinianly, produced in such a way that's foreign to the body and isn't seen as food, do you kind of cover some of these topics about what comes in is going to either, grow that health and wellness, or it's going to be growing that inflammation and disease?
Yeah. One of the main things that we tell people about, the beginning of my consultation always starts with an evaluation of how much stress the person's under. And as BJ Palmer, one of the first and founding chiropractors, used to always talk about the 3 T's: the thoughts, traumas, and toxins, or the physical, chemical, and emotional stress that we have. And really all stress can be boiled down into one of those 3 categories. And so we offer that to people just to really think about, what type of physical, chemical, or emotional stress are you under? And I tell people, listen, I can help the body heal, but if you have to help by reducing the physical, chemical, and emotional stresses. So we'll just go through it. We'll say, how many car accidents have you been? How many times have you fallen down? How's your posture? How is the food, air, and water, the things you put in and on your body? Are you conscious of that? And how is your emotional stress? Do you meditate? Do you deep breathing exercises? What do you do? Because some of these stresses we can't get away from. So what are the tools that you have to help deal with that stress? And if it's a bunch of zeros and they're like, I never thought about that and I don't do anything about that, then that's the ball's really in their court. I can only do so much from the outside, but one of the founding principles of chiropractic is that we heal from the inside out, that we're self-healing. And so that has to be understood, and that has to be taken into that person's hands and say, hey, you know what, like, this to me is a really big deal. Like, I never thought about how much emotional stress I'm under, and that's where I'm going to start. And then we want people to just take bite-sized chunks and just start with something like more water, learn how to breathe properly. Let's go to all the way to the most basic, fundamental, essential components to health. Can you address that in a very simple way, and then just build the momentum? And as you do that, it becomes easier and easier to take the next steps.
Now, how open are you finding that your current patients and those that you are interacting with in your professional circles locally are open to it's not radical, but your more expansive view of educating your patients? Because rather than creating codependencies where they need to come to you to have, each of these little individual solves, you're really empowering them to go back into their lives much more fully aware, obviously with tools in hand, so that they don't need your particular practice as often. And that's kind of a radical departure from mainstream medicine and a lot of industries for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, as I've continued more and more down that path of teaching people how to fish, instead of feeding them the fish, it becomes there's less people coming to my office more, over and over again. So I see a lot more new people, and they say, hey, go see my doctor. He's going to be able to help you figure this out. But, there's definitely, it's definitely against the grain, even within chiropractic circles. I mean, a lot of chiropractic is creating the need to continue to see the chiropractor. And my whole thing is, I'm also a yoga instructor, and I highly believe that if people did yoga, they would not have a third of, or maybe even 2/3 of the spinal conditions they have, because your body, like I said, is self-healing and self-regulating. And if you can take some regular yoga classes, you can really unwind a lot of that spinal tension. You don't need necessarily a chiropractic correction every single time you're out of alignment. The body does align itself.
Right.
So there's a lot of little things that I do that are really different. And I always say, hey, like, what would I tell my mother? If this was my mom sitting here with me, or my brother, or my wife, like, that's how I treat every single person that comes in there. They need to know the truth about health. They need to know that they're responsible for their health, and that I'm just the catalyst to maybe drip a little more information to help nudge them in the right direction. And then of course I have the specific art of chiropractic, where I will deliver a specific correction when needed, and that's when I know when I need to step in, when I don't.
Well, that is an understood in chiropractic care, and I know that many chiropractic doctors have created a much more expansive offering in terms of wellness protocols, working with supplements, understanding, as you said, that mental and emotional health is extremely important, and implementing different disciplines in meditation or yoga, which is all wonderful, because we recognize that inflammation being such an issue that it is in today's society, that we need to be coming at it from every level with which we exist. Now, when we're talking about health and wellness, and we're dealing with so much in the media and so much pressure around, right now there's a flu epidemic, for instance, and there may be a flu epidemic, but at the very least we know that mainstream media is saying that there's a flu epidemic.
Right.
And we go through having, patients that will come into your practice, and the fixation is on, how do I keep this from happening? What is going to be the quickest way to remediate this or to prevent it? And we're all looking for the silver bullet or the shot in the arm, not to be too proverbial. And when it comes to education, it's obviously important to you to give them a much fuller picture. So let's kind of walk through, what is it that has made your particular practice a little bit more unique maybe than every other chiropractor in town, in that you are so determined to create an educational protocol from the moment a new family comes in, whether they have small children or they have an infant or they're just preparing for a family, that you want them to understand inflammation, understand health and wellness and responsibility, and have some of the educational material that you currently provide in your practice?
Yeah, I think the key difference in my practice is, like I said, the empowering the patient to make their own decisions. Listen, everybody comes in a different place. Some people are so far from understanding the importance of, say, nutrition, or they're so into their materialistic stuff that you're getting into them to meditate or to, go for a walk like everyone has their place. And it's kind of my job to figure out, okay, let's take baby steps with this person. Maybe, like I said, they just need to take one little step, like drinking more water or more rest or something like that. So, and then there are other people that, they're very far along, and they're like, hey, like, I know all about GMO foods, and I know all about, be it maybe vaccinations or something, like some topic that they really want more information on. And then I'm like, okay, let's go down that road. That I'm more than happy to answer those types of questions. And so, while I know my specific niche is the understanding of chiropractic, the brain, the nervous system, being in chiropractic in the health and wellness field for so long, you run upon all the other topics, and I found it really important to go ahead and study those things. And I think people need to do that for themselves as well. But it's nice when someone can kind of boil it all down and put it in some sort of package for you and say, okay, like the 3 T's or something like that. Okay, now I can get stress. Like, it's 3 things. It's really 3 categories, and I can categorize it, and I can come up with a solution pretty quick.
Right.
So I think that, there's definitely maybe my role is just being able to help people absorb and be more aware.
I really appreciate that, and I'm sure that your patients do as well, because you are really looking at each individual as an individual instead of a herd. It is not a bunch of scales and graphs and analytics, that these are individuals with their own unique symptomology and their own prescription for wellness. And let's just go ahead and let's talk about inflammation, and let's talk about the immune system, because I know that, again, this is integral to your work. I know that when someone walks into your particular practice, that there's a lot of brochures and a lot of opportunities for education and discussion. How does chiropractic, as you apply it, and the holistic model within your practice, speak directly to vaccination and vaccination education and building a strong and healthy immune system for your young families?
That's a great question. One of the things that we talk about in chiropractic is that the body is self-healing and self-regulating, right? And that we have an innate intelligence. So there's 33 chiropractic principles. And the first few principles, chiropractic works in a deductive way. So, the first principle is that there's a universal intelligence, and then that there's an innate intelligence, and that we communicate with the universal intelligence in our innate intelligence through our nervous system. Mm-hmm. So I really try to get people to understand the big picture. Listen, if there's an intelligence inside of you that created you, then why would you need something from the outside to make you any better? This is the 2 cells to 3 trillion cells, right? This is an amazing thing. Our body's constantly, being reborn over and over again. Our cells are dying and starting over and over. I mean, our bodies are amazing miracles. And so if I can get people to understand the true paradigm of chiropractic, then they can make their decisions based off of that and say, well, if my body's self-healing and self-regulating and I have an innate intelligence, then don't I just want to trust that? Why would I want to trust maybe some sort of medicine or some sort of vaccine that is going to then change the way my body works when my body is in fact working perfectly already?
Exactly. Exactly. And there's a quote that you had sent ahead of the show that was to the understanding that it's not the seed, it's the soil. And I find that, something I'd like to play with a little bit. We recently had Greg Peterson with the Urban Farm on a past segment, and he was talking to his 1/3 acres that he's been able to create an entire teaching model to in Arizona and globally for those that are looking to create homesteading. And one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing that he emphasized is, yes, you're going to want to have good seeds. You're going to want to have heirloom organic. You're going to want to have things that have not been overly hybridized or laden with poisons. But the quality of the soil is integral to the health of anything you choose to grow or to its success in being able to propagate. And so let's apply that here. Let's talk about how that is part of your education being passed along to your patients about the healthy soil, proverbially speaking, with regards to their body and their immune systems.
Right. Yeah. The old adage of it being like, if somebody comes in with the flu and sneezes on a room full of people, does every single person in that room get the flu? Highly unlikely. Maybe 1 or 2 out of 20 or 30 people would get it. And the difference is, it's not the seed that the sneezing germs from this person, it's the soil of the people in the room. And so if your soil is healthy, your immune system is strong, you're not going to get that particular germ, virus, bug, whatever it is. If the germ theory was real, we'd all be dead. There's so many germs, there's so much bacteria out there. It's impossible for that it's called a theory for a reason. We all know the microbiome, that we're covered in bacteria. We have strep and everything on us all the time. So, it's not the bugs, it's us, and it's the swampy, dirty, swampy water that gets all the mosquitoes. It's not the fresh flowing river. So, we have to really look at our soil and take, once again, responsibility for our health. And if we're getting, sick all the time, it's not bad luck or bad genes. It's you. If you're not taking care of yourself, there's something wrong, and you need to help and if you need someone to help figure it out, you need to do that,
Right.
And so that's really, and it's hard. It's hard for people to know that. They want to be able to blame something, we all do. I want to say, oh man, like it was that snotty kid, or it was that, it's the, how it is, all the germs, or it's flu season. Like what you brought up, the flu epidemic or flu season. I mean, what a joke. If that's not marketing, then I don't know what is. I mean, that's just complete BS. The flu does not have a season. If anything, it's maybe the lack of sunlight in the wintertime. We're all inside more. We're all eating way worse foods over Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that, all the sugary stuff. So inflammation kicks up, our cortisol levels go up, our hormone profile gets out of whack, and boom, we get sick. But there's no season of the flu. It's our lifestyles gone down the drain for the holidays. So, I have a unique perspective, but I think there's a lot of people that are, will agree with me on that.
Well, I think that your perspective is part of a universal holistic model. I mean, you're speaking to principles that have been considered by those that have done deep, deep dives in investigating into the nature of consciousness, the nature of, as you said, that universal intelligence, and the cellular intelligence of every aspect of our physicality. It is cued, it is listening, it is responding to the environment that it's in, whether it's a stressful environment or it's peaceful music, whether it's meditating or it's running, around the gym. we're all going to experience various degrees of stress, but this is part of the soil model you're mentioning. We have to keep our bodies and our lifestyles in balance so that we are not susceptible to disease, imbalance, and degradation. And I appreciate that you're being so direct about it, because I think that a lot of our viewers are very confused. We want to believe that we can trust when we go see a wellness professional, when we go and see anyone outside of our realm of expertise, that if they are being paid and they've established themselves in a profession, we can count on them having the information that we need to make particular choices. And I'm going to use a little example here. There is a friend of our family that is dealing with a wife that has stage 4 cancer. And I have my own personal I have my own personal views on how I would go about that if I was experiencing it personally, or a member of the family. But their way was immediately to go with their oncologist and get a port and immediately start going through rounds of chemo and radiation. And the wife was going through her 4th round. And while she was putting together some thank you cards for those that had been praying for and taking care of her, she got a paper cut. And the paper cut turned into an infection that became out of control and turned into MRSA. This is an extreme degree of excessive, secondary and tertiary symptomology due to a very depressed immune system, due to the therapies and the treatments that she's getting right now. This is just a more extreme example of trying to demonstrate the soil, as you're stating, is really going to make or break whether or not we are susceptible. So let's just take that and look at what, vaccine proponents are saying in terms of our immune systems are inadequate to be able to be strengthened through some of the diseases, especially the most communicable with children, all the way up into some of the more sophisticated that we're hearing now. Let's talk to what a strong immune system would actually look like, and the need for this type of intervention, Dr. Joe.
Wow. Well, I mean, yeah. Sorry to hear about that the family member with the cancer. I've been through similar situations with family members, friends, and it's always really hard to take to figure out where your place is, because it's not like, a lot of times no one even asks me. It's not that like they were like, hey, I got cancer, what do I do? But knowing the principles that I know about health and wellness, why on earth would you want to make your body weaker when you have cancer? You want to make your body stronger. You want to do everything you can to make your body as strong as possible to fight the cancer, instead of kill everything and hope you kill the cancer too. Like that, to me, that's just such a backwards approach to health. And I mean, it's almost criminal. I just can't believe that people deep down inside don't have some sort of like innate response to like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. Because to me, like, instantly doesn't make sense, and I'm just like, I'm blown away by it. So it's very similar with the vaccine situation. To me, it just doesn't make sense. Why on earth would you want to put to try to trick your immune system? I mean, first of all, we don't ever have germs directly into our bloodstream. It never happens. Everything comes through either our nose or our mouth, and we have all these things in place to help start the immune process, right? We've got the small little hairs in your nose, and your saliva is acidic, and I mean, but it's something to get all the way into your blood. It has to be a pretty hardcore germ, or your body has to already not be working right. So to start with a vaccine directly into the blood, boom, you've already bypassed like half the body's protection. So now you've got this mega dose of whatever virus or bacteria is right into the body. Never happens in nature. Completely unnatural response, creates all sorts of distractions for your immune system. Now your body is under this complete bombardment of germs. It switches all of its gears to that, fighting these mega diseases, probably multiple ones at the same time, which we can go into. Obviously, the least studied in all of the vaccine issues is the multi-dose vaccine. They say they've studied the safety and effectiveness of vaccinations, which we can may or may not be true, but they've never studied multiple dose vaccinations. So you're getting all these heavy doses of diseases right into your bloodstream. And that right there is just completely changes how your immune system works.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just to start off and then to go down the road of, okay, is this even working? Does that even then produce, because most of these vaccinations come very front loaded as a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And our immune systems aren't even fully developed until you're 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a huge problem with the science behind vaccinations right from the start. Our blood-brain barrier is not fully developed until we're 2, 3. Some people are saying 4 or 5 now. So we've got all the chemicals that are in the vaccines, besides the actual bacteria, going straight to the brain.
Right.
So I mean, there's so many subtopics in vaccinations that it's easy to get lost in all the details. And that's why I would just step back and say, listen, the body knows what it's doing. Don't mess with it. And it seems almost too simple, because people want to know all the information, but it's like, and we can go and talk about every little sub detail, and that's fine. And there's books and written about it. Dr. Tim O'Shea has a great book called Vaccination is Not Immunization that really goes through each individual vaccine. And so there's some great books out there that for the details for sure.
Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about building a healthy immune system, and we're recognizing that the soil is a big aspect of it, the first thing I guess that maybe those that you're dealing with in the public really need to be empowered with is an understanding that, number one, their bodies are innately intelligent, reminding them that that happens to be true, and then allowing them to recognize also that every choice that they make is going to have a potential consequence. We don't always think about contraindications. We don't always think to ask our doctors that are well-meaning, that we have great relationships with, that went to medical school in many cases with the best of intentions of taking care of others, but are also somewhat codependent on the industries that are paying their way, that maybe are writing their curriculum, that come front-loaded with their own protocols on how they want them to be treating their patients. Big Pharma is very hand in hand. My understanding, I had to grab some notes on the way in preparation for this, but it's my understanding that vaccines alone, and Big Pharma is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. They didn't even go into how many trillions, but it's a minimum of 25 billion in this country alone. And for those that say, well, gosh, these vaccines are free, of course they are trying to get them out to the public, take care of everyone, every child by 2. 55 vaccines by the time the child is between 5 and 6 is now on the schedule, with many more to come. There's enough aspects of this that we would have to say, is there ever going to be a conflict of interest? We know that we may love our medical professionals, we may respect where they're coming from, and we know that they believe in what they're doing. But that does not, does it, Dr. Joe? That does not obfuscate our responsibility for our own health or for our children, because the consequences of not being properly informed are the consequences we're going to have to live with long term. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, to touch on your point of, what do you do? Like, what do you do besides knowing that the body is self-healing and self-regulating to build a strong immune system? And I think that's the awareness of what we put in and on our body, and the physical, chemical, and emotional stresses that we have, right? So we've got to really teach people a lifestyle that can ensure a healthy immune system and a healthy body, really, and that to me always starts with a healthy nervous system. The nervous system coordinates all the other systems of the body. So there has to be proper brain-body communication. The power has to be on. There has to be that nerve supply to and from every nerve, to every cell and organ in the body. So healthy immune system, healthy digestive system, reproductive system, mostly the autonomic nervous system, which is the part of the nervous system that you don't really have to think about, has to be working properly. And then we have to have the right food. We have to have proper rest. We have to have good water. I mean, it's the really simple things, but it's the little differences between the sweeteners that are in people's foods, it's the artificial colorings, it's the preservatives. Is your healthy water bottled water? Because it's probably not healthy. So can you take it to the next step? Can you get away from the plastics? Can you get away from the processed? Can you get away from the constant need for electronic things like cell phones and things like that. Can we get to a more natural state? We're going to have a better immune system, and so that comes with time, teaching people, as they're ready to take the next step further and further. And of course, parenting, is a bit is as a parent, an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old currently, we have to instill these principles in our children, and guess what? You have like 18 years to do it. So just take small things and one thing at a time and teach your kids. And of course, leading by example. So it's not that difficult to have a healthy immune system and a healthy body if you understand the principles. And then, when you get into the second part of your question, talking about, the pharmaceutical companies and their overly, I guess, aggressive vaccination schedule, and how it just continues to grow and grow and grow. And is it really at our best interest? Because we have to live with those decisions. We've got an epidemic, a real epidemic, not a flu one, but a real epidemic of sensory processing issues in children. This whole spectrum of everything from ADHD to autism is everywhere. And it's hard to deny that it's not directly correlated to the aggressive vaccination schedule. We have these neurological disorders, and those are the consequences you have to deal with when you, in fact, don't take your health and you don't take the time to study and maybe say, hey, you know what, this just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I want to wait. And maybe as a new parent, you get that gut instinct at that first doctor's visit where they want to give your baby. I know for me, they came to our first pediatrician appointment with my daughter with Tylenol, and then the nurse came in with Tylenol, and I was like, well, what's that for? And they were like, well, she's going to need that after she gets her vaccines. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not happening. But it was just funny that they were going to start with Tylenol, which, by the way, is the worst thing you can do before a vaccine, because it lowers your glutathione levels, which helps protect your brain from the chemicals and the heavy metals. So, there's just those two things together it's the worst thing you could have done. So, it's really important as a parent. So maybe if I wasn't me and I didn't have all that knowledge, I would have just at least said, hey, you know what, something doesn't seem right about this. Give me some time. I want to research this,
Yes.
And I think if you just take a step back and you slow down, because so many parents just go straight into this oh my God, I have a baby. What do I do? How do I make it healthy as possible? And they freak out and they just start jumping on. They either listen to what everybody else says, and they don't take the time to actually educate themselves. So taking a step back, realizing that, you have the time to read a couple books, to watch some content like we have here for you guys, to really say, you know what, this does or this does not make sense to me, and I want to go with it or not. So education, yet again, being really important.
Right. Well, and any social herd mentality of I'm going to do what everyone else does has never been a self-advocated position for anyone. We learn very hard lessons throughout, human history and society when we don't take the time to not only advocate for ourselves, but be able to break through old broken paradigms of thought, theories that really were not well placed to begin with, and help our future generations break new ground in their own self-empowerment. I know that many are intimidated when they go into a medical clinic or facility or doctor's office. I personally experienced with my first 4 children that the very first going in with a pediatrician, and I said, I'd like to read the literature first. They didn't have the literature around the first rounds of vaccines that they wanted to provide my child. And I remember the doctor very arrogantly and condescending to me and saying, do you actually think that you could possibly learn more than what I know now? Why can you not just trust my word on this? And I said, well, I believe that I intuitively have some grasp on, inherently, innately, like the rest of the mammalian kingdom, to know how to care for my young. And my opinion in this is that I don't have enough information. She isn't your child. She's mine. I'm going to learn for myself. And there are a lot of doctors' offices and pediatricians that are not going to be that impatient, but they are rewarded by the pharmacy industry to make sure that a certain percentage are fully vaccinated on the schedule, or they are penalized in terms of funding and grants. And there was a recent expose. I want to touch on this right now because we have to remember we assume too much when we believe that there are not ever going to be conflicts of interest. It isn't that our favorite doctors are necessarily in alignment with this, but we need to recognize that some of these watchdog agencies, just as Katie Couric just demonstrated on CBS expose, if you follow the money, you'll find out that the American Academy of Pediatrics, Dr. Offit, who is constantly speaking about what vaccines should be added to the schedule, and the Every Child by Two, are all receiving grants between the hundreds of thousands and into the millions for their programs, for vaccines that they actually are also invested in and own royalties for in the hundreds of millions of dollars. How can they be our watchdogs for us and be suggesting to our faithful and well-intentioned pediatricians and specialists what is in our best interest as the public when they are directly financially vested in it? It was a very bold expose, not something that we see very often because those that speak out against vaccines are often targeted. We know this. Dr. Wakefield, we've got a lot of documentaries that have come through with Vaxxed, The Truth About Vaccines. John Kennedy Jr. has got a whole project going with the World Mercury Project and talking about the fact that we haven't done proper tests, as you've already mentioned, with these bundled vaccines and the amount of adjuvants and the amount of chemicals that have contraindications with aluminum and mercury to the brain, and that this is causing swelling, inflammation, encephalitis, and is leading to some of these spectrum disorders that you've just mentioned. They'll say it isn't true, they'll say it isn't true, and that, you know, we've got people that are trying to make money off of confusing the public and diminishing herd immunity. But if you read the studies and you actually listen to these well-meaning individuals, they're actually putting their careers at risk, sometimes their lives on the line, and being very often discredited and disbarred, losing their licenses. So I appreciate you being so bold to speak to some of these topics and this common sense. You've also mentioned offline that you've worked with some vaccine-injured children. Let's talk a little bit about some of the supports that you provide your patients.
Yeah. Well, you know, these kids that come in, like you were saying, that there may or may not be, you know, all the research in the world out there. But when I have a mom who comes in and says, my kid was speaking and was perfectly coherent prior to the vaccines, and now they're not talking anymore, that, you know, to me, like, what other proof do you need? You know, I mean, this is right. And this is this mom in my office with her child, you know, why would she make up such a story? Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, so we've got these kids coming in and they're not, it's, you know, I wish I could say they were few and far between, but, you know, a lot of these kids that are coming in our office have been injured from this current vaccination schedule. And it could be everything from, you know, being nonverbal to ongoing bedwetting to all the sensory processing things. And thankfully, you know, being able to work so closely with the nervous system, we can tune up the nervous system to reconnect and rewire and adapt to this body's now stress. Right? Because the nervous system, one of the main things it does is adapts to your environment. I mean, we have people that have all sorts of scoliosis and all sorts of things where you would think they would be in horrible health, and they're actually not, because the nervous system adapted to it, just like it can adapt to the stresses of these toxins in the body, and if you can make the nervous system work better. And so, you know, most people don't realize that they have some sort of misalignment in their spine, particularly the upper cervical spine is where we work a lot with those kids and anyone who has highly neurological stuff going on, because the vulnerability of that area being the kind of the weak link in the spine, most of the motion in their neck comes from the top vertebrae in the neck, and its proximity to the brainstem, which makes it, you know, have a huge impact, obviously, on the nerve system and that autonomic nervous system we were talking about earlier, immune, digestive, reproductive, the balancing of the fight, flight, and the rest and digest, the two major parts of the autonomic nerve system. And so that's what we work on with these kids, is really making sure that their brain and nervous system is working as best as possible so that they can overcome all the negative effects of of these vaccines, and then the thoughts, traumas, and toxins that go along with it. Obviously, the toxicity aspect is huge. Most of the time, it really gets down to just teaching parents to stop giving their kids processed foods, fast foods, things like that. Put real food in your kid, and the body will once again heal. It needs the minerals. It needs the real foods. It needs foods that were grown organically, and the body will take those individual nutrients and it'll do what it needs to do. We all know the garlics and the parsleys and the cilantros and all of the things, the amazing things that it does with the body. That should just come every single day and every single meal. I'm not a huge fan of big supplement programs. I'm not a huge fan of having to heavy dose pills in any form. Of course, there are times when those things are needed, and then I think you pull back, you use it and you pull it back. But I think most of the time we try to teach people sustainable lifestyle changes, being eating right.
Right. Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, it sounds so easy when you say it that way, and
Right.
it seems so common sense, but it escapes us because, again, we're just all about big information and what is not right with society and what is the quick solve, the big solve, the most expensive solve. And we're often oriented to look for this one avenue that's going to solve all of our problems, that's going to drop those 20 pounds, that's going to, alleviate our chronic conditions. And just the simple and direct and common sense approach that you're making to what are you putting in your body? How natural is it? How was it produced? How is it correspond as a nutrient inside the body instead of something that's been overly processed? And I recognize when you're dealing with those that have been vaccinated and that are coming in saying that they've dealt with maybe potential symptomology that has come out of that, you may also be working with them, I would assume, on some of the maybe cleansing protocols or detox protocols or heavy metal detox. Do you work with them on that as well, Dr. Joe?
I have in the past, and there are definitely people out there that know more about that than I do. And so my strong suit is, kind of the big picture people. Give them the paradigm, give them the understanding, help them take that step towards, wanting to do that. But there's so many people that that's their thing. Like, they know detox. They know every effect of every herb and the synergies of the herbs and things like that. And so, and I have the resources for those people to go and talk to, and I can definitely direct people to, some basic things that I think are going to make a huge change. But I like people who come to me with plantar fasciitis or IT band syndrome and all these musculoskeletal issues, once again, not my thing. My thing is brain nerve system, right? So there's great people out there for those things. And I really want to help people get in front of the best person. So if we really think we're only getting so far with taking the basic approaches to lifestyle, and like I said, the more sustainable eating right, clearing the nerve system, doing the things that I know how to do, then it's like, okay, well, you need to go talk to somebody who really can help you. Maybe they do the total cellular detox with Dr. Pompa, or they do a 21-day cleanse or something through standard process. I mean, there's some great companies out there that have these things dialed in. And I think one of the main problems for me with the cleansing is that there's financial gains to selling these cleanses to people. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be associated with any product. I don't want people to think I convinced them that they need a cleanse, mm-hmm. right? Like, I want people, I want to be like disconnected. Like, I want to be the anti-medical doctor, because I don't want to be incentivized by selling somebody anything. Mm-hmm. I want people to realize that they're self-healing and self-regulating, and they don't need anything to do that. They just need to take care of themselves. And maybe they have a friend or somebody who that they can go to and get those supplements for, or there's another professional I can recommend them to. So I just try to stay a little bit back from treating any particular condition and just giving people, kind of the big picture and making sure that the body's working right through the brain and nerve system.
That is such a refreshing and wholly unique way of stating your highest motivations. It really sounds above board to make this statement. I really want to empower others with their own education rather than be constantly seeking to leverage myself in a profiteering way. And not to say that we would, fly in the face of those that are trying to sell supplements or wellness protocols, et cetera. But to come from such a puritanical perspective on that is really unique and rare. And I thank you for being so direct with our audience, because that's probably not something that they're hearing quite as often. When we're talking about families that are coming to you and they're saying, I like what you're offering in terms of education, but I believe that I'm legally bound to do such and such with my child to get them into school. If they're sick, I need to be able to give them this medicine. I need a doctor's note. If I'm not going to get them in to a private school, can you write me a letter because I may or may not have followed the vaccine schedule? Since you're dealing with this both as a parent and as a wellness professional, what advice do you give parents when it comes to this really rather unique and holistic approach to self-empowering them?
The key, I think, to talking to parents is first, just understanding what their real goal is. I think there's so many parents out there that they're swayed by the parents around them. Like, you were kind of back to that herd mentality. It's like, what is, obviously you feel pressure from somebody to do something different than what you really want to do. That's why they're talking to me about it, and they want to know, like, can I help solve their problem for them? And what I always try to boil it down to, and you alluded to it earlier, is, you're going to have to live with the consequences of the choices you make for your child. And, your child is the whole reason we're having this conversation. So, like, let's just boil it all the way down to what is the best thing for your child. And, do you really believe that putting these drugs in him or her is going to make them healthier or not? And if you really believe that, then you should go with that. And if you don't, then, then you're in the right place, because the consciousness of the people in our office, the majority, and there's some people, I can tell right off the bat, like they're not going to listen. They don't even want to think about having that conversation. And to me, it's like, okay, well, everyone's not always going to agree with me on everything. And my job in that point is just to make their body work as good as it can. Mm-hmm. And chiropractors have always talked about limitations of matter as being one of the caps on your ability to. There's limitations to matter, both mentally and physically, and I think sometimes people have those limits, and it's just up to me to say, okay, well, I'm gonna do everything I can in my power with my hands to help make sure your brain and nerve system work properly, and you're gonna make the decisions you're gonna make. I think a lot of parents are under the impression that they have to vaccinate their children to get them into school. It's just not true. We have exemptions. We have a religious and a medical exemption. If your child's had anything from a high fever to, any sort of physical reaction, be it small, that's enough of a medical exemption to not have further vaccinations. Also, the religious exemption is pretty broad. You don't have to prove that you go to this church, so to speak. It's kind of a shoot off of the philosophical exemption, which is much more rare these days. But most states have medical, have religious, and have philosophical exemptions, or one or two or all three of them. And I think that parents need to know that there is the ability to get your child exempt from vaccinations. It's not that difficult. There's if you talk to the right people, you can get the forms that have made it through the court systems, that have proven and held up, and you basically just fill your kid's name in a few different spots and turn it in instead of their vaccination slip. So don't be bullied into thinking that you have to have vaccinations. Now, maybe it's a private school, and those schools, they can say or do whatever they want, but public school can't be held against. You can't be held out of public school for not vaccinating. So they have their protocols and things that they may do if is maybe a measles outbreak or something like that, which to me I always think is hilarious because how is there a measles outbreak if 98% of your kids are vaccinated in the first place? And, what are you worried about the non-vaccinated kid for? If anything, this is your chance to vaccinate him with the measles, right? So, I mean, I always find that hilarious that they send the non-vaccinated kids home when there's diseases. Fine, good for them. Get them out of that mess. But, to me, it's education, and it's like, who do you know that can help you figure out how to get through this? We've got the form in our office that many parents use to get their children into school without vaccinations. So, it just comes down to the fact that there is a way.
It's really about common sense too, isn't it, Dr. Joe? Because you just made this statement. And this is a universal question by those that do investigate where this fear around the vaccinated community has from the unvaccinated. If you believe and have faith in the science, being solid in vaccination, then you have nothing to fear if you're fully vaccinated, nor do you have anything to fear if your child is fully vaccinated. It would be the unvaccinated child being an exposure to your child that is shedding through these, multiple diseases being shot into their bodies, or even singular doses that are coming out through the immune system, through the ears, the nose, the throat, the hands, the mucous membranes. But it is the most bizarre concept to me, and I've heard many specialists say, where did this reverse thinking come from, that the unvaccinated community is a threat to the vaccinated community? If we hear something enough, it is an old propaganda model that's been used again and again. We start to adapt or adopt its lack of rationale, and it simply becomes the way that we think, whether it's actually based on a correct principle or not. And I know that that's an issue. When we consider what the consequences are that we will live with if we did not educate ourselves, I just want to bring our viewers into a greater state of awareness. Here is where we are. As of 1986, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act limited legal liability against vaccine makers. Currently, they are 100% indemnified. You cannot sue them. There is, however, a special vaccine injury court that has already paid out over $36 billion in damages. And I hope I'm quoting that correctly. I've looked up these resources again and again, and there is constantly in the coffers in the tens of billions for upcoming cases every single year. We have true evidence and science that demonstrates that all of these adjuvants, these contraindications going directly into our immune systems with multiple diseases at once, heavy metals going into the brain, foreign animal DNA, is not a natural way with which our immune systems encounter any of these diseases in nature. And it really actually undermines the beauty of our immune system. Whatever choices we make, we ultimately do need to live with, don't we, Dr. Joe?
Yeah, you said that really well. The whole court system thing is, just yet another subtopic of the vaccines that just doesn't make any sense. There's no other profession, industry in this entire world that's exempt from being held liable for the product. It completely eliminates the need for them to make it safe. Of the most important thing we have, our children, our future is in these kids, and we're loading them up with something that doesn't even have to be proven safe. Because hey, if there's a problem, just sue the government. You can't even touch us. It's like 75 cents for every vaccine goes into this pool that then pays out the vaccine injured kids.
Yes, it's an excise tax, isn't it? From the vaccines themselves is actually what pays these fees. So we've already paid for it. It's the taxes we were taxed on by those that are paying for the vaccines that end up going into this pool that will ultimately be providing out, payments and rewards to those that have been able to demonstrate the vaccine damage. It's an important topic, and it is a loaded one. It's very heated and debated because we all want to be responsible individuals for our own health. We all want to be good parents. It's a lot to be informed about, but is there anything more crucial than understanding that really we are responsible and we are advocating for our own health, our own bodies. We cannot just subjugate our sovereign power over to someone because they have credentials behind their name or they're well-meaning with a white coat. And Dr. Joe, we really appreciate that you've been with us tonight. You have a beautiful common sense and altruistic approach to this. I want to give you a quick moment to tell our viewers where they can learn a little bit more about your practice and also about protocols, websites perhaps that you can direct them to get more information on these pertinent topics.
Well, thanks, Dr. Tiana. It was my pleasure being here tonight. You can find me I'm up here in the Raleigh area in Wake Forest. So I'm wakeforestchiro.com is my website. You can find my links to my Facebook and my YouTube pages and things like that there. So if you're in the area or you want to do even a phone consultation with me, hit us up on the website. We'll be in touch. You know, get in touch with me pretty quickly. You know, there's plenty of resources out there to understand vaccinations better. I really like books. I think people could probably read a few really good books, like the Dr. Tim O'Shea's book on vaccination is not immunization, like I mentioned before. Dr. Neil Miller has a book on vaccinations that's really good. It just shows you the statistics. You know, there's it's escaping me, the National Vaccine Information Center, NVIC, as a website to look at. So please do your research. And I think once you really sit down and get this information in your head, you're gonna know what to do.
Brilliant. Well, again, it is a valuable bit of information that really is extensive and needed to be touched on. We are living in a disinformation age. There is a lot of news out there that is really about bringing in consumers' dollars and growing some of these enormous big systems that much bigger. And it isn't necessarily always in our highest and best interest. So we do need to be paying attention for these things ourselves. That's what Solutionary TV is about. Remember, independent media, platforms and outlets like this are funded by you. We would love to have you go to solutionarytv.com and be a sponsor, be a donor. And remember, we can't provide this content for you because we're not being heavy lifted by the big corporate moguls that are keeping you in the loop. We are looking to bring you this exciting and independent content. And remember, as you support us, we can support you because together we are the solution.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.